James and Jing here with Duet. We're very excited to welcome Khalid to talk to us about fuel cards and all the different cost savings this can mean for NEMT fleets. Um, so without further ado, Khalid, do you want to give us a little intro on sort of your background and how you ended up in the fuel card space?
Yeah, and thanks, James. Thanks, Jing, for inviting me. Hello, everybody. My name's Khalid El-Awady. I work for a fintech company called CarIQ. We'd like to think of ourselves as a next generation fleet card platform. I've been in payments for a very long time. I started at Visa in the early 2000s. And then after working there for a few years, I moved on to a variety of different startups in the financial technology space. And now I'm currently working in fleet cards. So pleasure to meet everybody.
Fantastic. So I guess the first question on my mind when I met you was like, what even is a fuel card? Like how do these things work? And so, assume we know nothing. Tell us from the ground up what these things are for.
Yeah. So a lot of businesses have, expense cards. If you're a very small business, you might have your own checking account, maybe with a debit card or a credit card. But generally, for your employees, you can get expense cards of some form. My company, for example, uses Expensify. But when it comes to your vehicle related expenses, so paying for gas, paying for vehicle related services, a lot of times companies will get a specialty expense card for their drivers. And what's different about, and those are called fleet cards, and or sometimes gas cards or fuel cards. And what's kind of different about them compared to any other type of business expense card is generally two things. One, they come with a lot of extra controls. Your business expense card or your T&E card. You can use it to travel. You can use it to buy, office supplies, things of that nature. Usually with fleet cards, they are highly restricted to vehicle-related expenses. Sometimes only gas, sometimes gas and, related things like parking, maintenance, things like that. The other thing that businesses generally want with fleet cards is a little bit extra reporting. If you're especially operating a fleet, the your fuel expenses, things like that, are often a big part of your business expense. And a lot of companies will want some additional data to track other than how much they spent. For example, they'll want to know how many gallons of gas they consume. They might want to know, track vehicle odometer readings over time, things like that, so they can track mileage. So that extra kind of specialty reporting is another feature that you generally get with a fleet card. Oftentimes, if you don't have a specialty fleet card with those additional controls, it's not unusual for businesses to see leakage or misuse around whatever card they might have. A classic example might be, um, uh, you know, an employee or a driver uses the fleet card or the expense card that they have for
Mhm.
purposes other than what it's intended to. If putting gas in your own car instead of, on the company card, things like that, it does happen. It's very hard to track.
Mhm.
And so, some of the benefits you get with fleet cards is a way to monitor that, a way to track that. And as soon as you sort of start paying attention, it generally will go away, and then there's some cost savings there. More generally, if you look at a lot of the fleet cards that are out there, they often come with a discount at maybe your favorite brand. So
Mhm.
if you like Chevron, you can find a Chevron card where you get a few cents off a gallon of gas every time you buy at Chevron, or maybe you get some loyalty or rewards points that then you can convert to some cost savings there too. Those are very common things with fleet cards.
Mm. So how should we think about different categories of fleet cards? So one category you mentioned is like, your favorite local brand of gas station. Another night might be something like CarIQ. What other sort of options are there? Sort of what how would you define the categories here?
Yeah, so if you looked at fleet card providers, and there's a lot out there, I'll mention sort of the big ones. Uh, there's two big companies, one called WEX, W-E-X, and the other one is a company that used to be called FleetCor, is now known as CorPay, and has a variety of different brands for the actual cards. Fuelman is their biggest brand. And then maybe the number three player in the market is a card a brand called Voyager, which is a product offered by U.S. Bank. And then there's many sort of newer entrants, including a company like CarIQ. The three traditional big players, WEX, FleetCor, and or CorPay, and Voyager, traditionally they compete a little bit on pricing. So maybe I'll say something quick about that. Generally, when you get a fleet card, you'll pay a monthly subscription fee and potentially, and then if you're, and you'll get, it's actually the model is a charge card, so it's sort of a credit card, but you have to pay it off at the end of the month. And so, if you are late paying, there's often late fees, penalties. And it kind of turns out for some companies, that's actually a big part of the business model. Some
Mhm.
companies are perpetually late paying, and you can generate a fair amount of late fees from that. And for whatever reason, some fleets don't mind. But if you are paying consistently on time, then the traditional business model for a fleet card is you'll pay, some $3, $4 per card per month subscription fee. The bigger the fleet, the more you can negotiate down that fee. And then if you don't pay your bills on time, you will often get hit with penalties and late fees. That's the traditional way. So if you look in the market, there a variety of, how much per month you pay. There's a variety of that. Um, and then the late fees do vary as well. And then those discounts at specific gas station brands. Each of those competitors has kind of negotiated deals. So one might have Shell, one might have Chevron. Maybe you can get 5 cents off a gallon here, 3 cents off a gallon there. The newer entrants like CarIQ try to differentiate on sort of experience. We offer a
Mm.
digital alternative to the physical card, the plastic card. So it's a mobile app that you can download and pay that way. Or maybe with better reporting or nice analytics that, they'll do some analysis on your spend for you, show you your efficiency, show you how much you're consuming gas, things like that.
Mhm. Interesting. So, what, when you think about sort of the value of analytics on a fuel card, I mean, I think everyone understands, 5 cents off a gallon of gas is awesome. Um, how do you think about valuing the analytical part? Like, what does
Hmm.
knowing stuff in such fine detail get you as an NEMT service?
For a lot of fleet operators, the the fuel in particular could be sometimes and often is the largest business expense that the company has. And so if you think of, I know you guys are in more of the actually, non-emergency management. I mean, I'll defer to you on how the fleets operate. But if you look at the expense of that business, or many businesses, think of a delivery business, think of, you're a local plumber, somebody who does home services. So they can't do a job unless they send a vehicle out, and those vehicles are often driving around all day long. So fuel can be, one of the largest expenses of the business. Certainly for companies that are like long haul truckers, it is like 80, 90% of their operating expenses just fuel. Maybe less for fleets that drive around inside the city, but still, like it's an expense that you want to understand if you are trying to optimize your business operations. So, tracking what you can learn from your fuel expense and by some analytics is what's your gas consumption, how many miles to the gallon or how many miles to the dollar do you get? So kind of more of a financial metric. You might find that certain vehicles drive a lot, certain vehicles drive a little bit. So there's always sort of even business insight once you start looking at your fuel consumption that you can, we always look at fleets. And if you think of the vehicles in the fleet as a portfolio, some drive a lot, some don't. Some drives on certain days, some don't. And oftentimes, unless you look at that data, you wouldn't even be aware that some of that is happening, and it can give you some insight into your business.
I do have a question regarding the fuel cards, because I did notice that some providers, I guess it's really related to how the cars being the cost of those cars, because they don't have a card for every single their vans. So which means actually they have 10 vans, they may have like 4 or 5 cars. And one thing I did notice that those are actually plastic cards, physical cards. They have to store somewhere. So what I noticed that sometimes one vehicle it needs to gas up, fuel up, and they don't actually have cars, so they have to go back to the office or know which other vehicles on the road has a car that they have to meet there. So there are a lot of time wasted as well as like mileage, I guess, wasted. So in that case, I was wondering, in the new gen fuel cars like yours, are there any digital cars like you don't have to go through those hassles?
Yeah, totally, and thank you for that question because that's kind of a softball question for CarIQ. So yes, one of the ways we try to differentiate in the market is by offering a digital first experience, which means you download an app and you sort of use an app, and it turns out. Many gas stations you can unlock pumps, turn them on and off using an app. The sort of technology exists for doing that, and that means that you can get rid of the physical card, and that provides one, less overhead. Management of those cards can be very tedious. If you have drivers, you have to, either get a card into the hand of the driver or you leave a card in the glove box of the vehicle. They can get lost. Those cards have pins, so the driver has to remember what the pin for the card is, and those are, often forgotten. So there's a lot of customer service calls that'll come. And then, as you mentioned, Jing, if you're trying to put controls around those cards and you keep them at the office and the driver needs to go pick it up, then that's a hassle too. So the benefit of the an app-based approach is you don't need a physical card and you can still have all of the controls in place. In fact, even a little more, because in the digital world, there's a few more things you can do than you can in the physical world. So you can control who is accessing the app at what time, know what vehicle they tend to be driving, things of that nature. And that is one way, is by, removing the hassle of dealing with plastic is definitely an option today. We're not the only ones with an app. I'll put that out there. I think the industry is seeing there's benefits to moving to digital.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. So tell me about the costs. I'm very interested in the cost. Traditional cars, those
Mhm.
physical plastic cars versus digital ones, how you guys pricing, not you particularly, but like the fleet car companies price their cars. And because you mentioned earlier, there's tons of configurations, each vendors like I guess set up with the different brands of gas stations, etc. So like give us a little bit idea about the cost to provide to fleet operators
Mhm.
in terms of those goods.
And I'll go back. It's not overly complicated. Really, almost everybody in the market, especially for the smaller fleet segments. Once you get into very large fleets, everything gets negotiated, and there's a lot of custom stuff that happens. But for a reasonable fleet, under 50 vehicles or something like that, then it's mostly canned offerings. You can negotiate a little bit, but not a lot. And most everybody follows the same model of I'll charge you a monthly fee per card, So if you have 10 vehicles, 10 cards, you might be paying $3 or $4 per card per month for that. And then if you're late paying your bill, the penalties vary. Some are more egregious than others, so that's worth looking at. And then as you're buying the card or picking your provider, discounts can be that can be an important decision for the fleet. So if you're getting 5 cents off a gallon of gas and you have, at a Chevron or whatever, at your favorite brand, then depending on how much you consume, so if your business uses 1,000 gallons of gas a month, times 5 cents, so there's $50 or something. So when you're thinking about the provider, you should think about it holistically, because maybe you're making up in rebates, that discount on fuel, what you're paying on the monthly fee. But generally, that's all. If you're paying on time, fleet cards are mostly just about a monthly service fee.
I see. So in that case, if I'm shopping for a fleet card, like on my mind, from what I just heard, there's maybe 2 to 3 factors I need to take a look. One is actually what kind of benefit, which gas brand they have the good discounts, and I mean that because brands varies, right? So my market, my Chevron might be the largest chain, but other markets maybe it's a Shell. So that's one I'm looking at. And then the cost of the card to me. And then so the third, and then late fee, whether I'm being penalized for the late fees, for the late payment. And then the third one, I would imagine could be other benefits. What items I can use this card for, right? So fuel is one. You mentioned the mechanic, how about mechanics? How about my tire changes, oil changes? How about my toll? How about like if I send a driver for a long distance trip, I might actually pay them to like have a lunch at the
Yes,
McDonald's. So how about
exactly.
those? Mhm.
Yeah, so thank you. So those are great. So if you start with the cost is like everybody looks at that. That's always the place to start. And then once you're past that, then that's where everybody tries to differentiate a little bit. So I might offer some of that analytics and reporting that you get more maybe with a CarIQ than you get. You might then prefer the digital experience over a plastic experience, and some companies will have those. As you mentioned, Jing, the range of services offered by the company. So once you get, everybody starts with fuel because that's the largest expense. But some support other categories. Some might say, can I use the card inside the convenience store? Or is it only work at the pump? Do I have a choice? Can I use it to pay for other things? And then you even brought up some newer things, which some companies do, which is like disbursements. Like maybe I want to pay my driver on that card, or give them a per diem that they can use to, buy lunch or whatever. So yes, you will start to see a lot of, especially the newer entrants, are trying to differentiate by expanding the range of services and stuff like that.
Got it. Okay. So uh so James, sorry, I overtake
Oh, no,
the.
no, no, you're good. Actually, I was just thinking, if you wanted, you had a couple of those slides that I thought were really good, and would love
Hmm,
to just walk through some of
sure.
those with you.
Yeah. Let me share my screen.
Especially like the case studies at the end, I thought were pretty compelling.
Yep. Okay, I won't. You're welcome to stop me at anything that is interesting and you want to talk about a little bit further. But otherwise, I'll just sort of call out a few things. These are slides that I got from our kind of CarIQ marketing materials. I'll speak more generally to the market as a whole, but they are written sort of in a style for highlighting some of the benefits of CarIQ in particular. And one thing, if you're curious about how big this market is, we have this one specifically is referencing connected vehicles, which means vehicles that you can access their data. I would assume a lot of your customers in emergency or non-emergency transfers and things like that want to track where their vehicles are,
Oh yeah.
things like that. So they use what's called telematics data for that, and we call those types of vehicles connected vehicles. Most vehicles today are connected. So you have 27 million connected fleet vehicles in the U.S. We estimate that the fleet market as a whole in the U.S. is about 35 million vehicles. And the spend, $1.4 trillion spent by vehicles, that is a lot of spend. So for anybody that's in payments, and this is sort of the reason why there's so many companies that go after this space, it's a lot of spend. Yeah. So even though it's a very restrictive use case, where, as we said, you can only use it for fuel or maybe some additional parking, tolls, things like that. Those dollars are quite big. I'll flash some brands here. I mentioned that WEX and then this company FleetCor, which is rebranded as Corpay, but some still know it as FleetCor. Those are the two big providers. And then within those families, you can get sort of like a co-branded card, like the Chevron example of WEX might have one where you get a specific discount at Chevron. Some of these gas stations offer their own card. Shell, for example, is a great example. You can go to Shell and get a Shell card with a Shell discount. It may only work at Shell. You have to kind of check. Some of these cards it could be used broadly. Some of them, the only place they work is at the Shell station. And Shell's, there's a lot of Shells. Shells is about like 10% of the gas stations out there. So sometimes you can get away if you have regular routes and in your local area, all of the stations and you like your Shells, then that's good enough. If you tend to drive in a lot of different places, it's hard to rely on just one brand. For anybody who drives even a little bit outside very regular routes, they usually find themselves on occasion using a different brand. So that's something to think about as well. And then, you've heard about CarIQ, but other entrants, Coast, there's a company called Coast. There's a company called A2B. If you're into bigger trucks, there's some specialty cards out there for larger vehicles. We call them class 6 through 8. So big trucks, mud flap, so there's a variety. Ramp of businesses that offer more customized cards for large trucks. I mentioned this is again CarIQ marketing materials, but it just is to highlight what are some of the things that you might think about as you're considering your provider, and the things that I'll call out. We always market that, that physical card, having to deal with the physical card can be challenging. So digital is one alternative where you could have a different experience and not have to deal with the hassle of cards. And then misuse, I'll say something about that in a second. That is a common issue, so think about your driver taking the gas card out of your car and using it to put gas in their own car. So you don't want them doing that. It can be hard to detect and prevent. So there's companies like CarIQ innovate around ways to try to minimize that. And then, the two things here, reporting and reconciliation, kind of two sides of the same coin. One, I talked about analytics and things that you might be curious to understand your fuel use. And reconciliation, being able to import your fuel expenses, use some kind of accounting system or ERP, like some kind of software to manage your business. And you want to pull in your gas expenses and those card expenses in a way that makes it easy to manage. Oftentimes, that's another area that you'll find. Certain fleet cards might have certain integrations with QuickBooks, or in your space, there may be specialty management software that are commonly used, and you might be interested in a provider that has an integration to that system. Well, I will show here, we like to market that we can save you money, and I'll tell you a little bit about how we do that. But we've done case studies with our customers, and this is one example where we had saved a customer 12% of the spend on fuel, and that's controlling for things like the price of gas. So that just means that if they were using 100 gallons of gas a month before they adopted our product, they found themselves using 88 gallons of gas after that, controlling for seasonality, all of
Sure,
the
sure.
things that, and how do things like that happen? And the way CarIQ does it is, again, we leverage data from the vehicle. So as I mentioned, oftentimes you can get your vehicle location and know where it is. And, there's software providers that'll help you schedule and track, which I assume is what Duet does. There are other things, other data parameters you can also get off of the vehicle. And an example is your fuel level. So CarIQ generally has access to a vehicle's fuel tank level. And when you go to the gas station and you buy 10 gallons of gas from Shell or Chevron, CarIQ will check your gas tank before and after and see if you receive 10 gallons of gas in your gas tank. So if somebody is taking your fuel card and putting gas in their own vehicle, then you will get a mismatch between, somebody bought 10 gallons of gas, but the gas in this vehicle did not go up by 10 gallons. So something is kind of fishy. And that's what we do. These graphs are meant to show you, where these are different fills for a specific vehicle. And we know where it starts, we know where it ends, and we know, how much gas was purchased. So the example here is to say, the gas tank had, 10, almost 10 gallons on this fill, but the person purchased 15 gallons of gas in a gas tank that can only take 20 gallons.
That's a little
So,
suspicious.
well, where did those extra 5 gallons go? And so the way this might happen, we don't make claims that they are doing this because we don't know, but it's not unusual that somebody, let's say, pumps 10 gallons into their vehicle, and then while the pump is active, maybe puts 5 gallons in a different vehicle. So that you can, by monitoring and reporting on this, you can go have a talk with that driver. You can ask them, what's going on. Maybe they're filling up auxiliary tank, maybe like you're dragging a wood chipper behind your vehicle and that needs gas and that's legit. Maybe you have a chainsaw or something, some additional piece of equipment that takes a little bit of gas. So there may be legitimate reasons. But if that's not your business and you can't explain it, you might have a conversation with the driver.
Hmm.
And then I'll say that the general benefit, what we find all the time is when drivers, know that they're being watched, generally misuse stops. I mean, it's the same as, if the cookie jar is out and it's open and it's on the table and nobody's watching, the kid, it's very hard to, not take a cookie here and there. But if the cameras are on and, you've locked the cookie jar and all the rest of that, people just, stop doing that kind of
Hmm.
behavior.
That's
Makes
very
total
interesting.
sense. So is 12%, 10%, 12%, is that a sort of typical level of savings people might see after
Yeah.
implementing a fuel?
Yeah, yeah, it's very, 10% easily is, most businesses might not even know how much they're losing because they've never tracked it. But we find consistently with businesses that once they institute our program and, and all these additional controls, their gas consumption will go down. Easily 10%. And there's a lot of cost savings that they can get. Particularly if you're not using a fuel card today, almost certainly there's something going on, and you just don't have any idea. It's the same as just like any expense. If you're not tracking it, if you're not paying attention to it, if you're not putting any controls on it, um, generally, like stuff happens. And but once you put controls in place and you start monitoring and tracking, easily 10% cost. We've seen even much higher. I mean, all depends on
Sure.
your business. And, sometimes you get these fleets where, there's one bad apple driver in the group that does some misuse, but sometimes it becomes a thing. And then, the amount of misuse can be quite high. 20, 30% we've seen in
Oh,
some
wow.
cases.
Wow, that's amazing. So, oh, by the way, Khaled, because it sounds like CarIQ, it needs data from the vehicle tracking device like trackers.
Yes.
So I know, as far as we know, that there's so many of tracking system out there. The largest one I heard is the Samsara,
Uh-huh.
and then we work with so many providers, and they all use. It looks like I haven't seen come across many of them use the same one. So it's so fragmented, and there's so many out there. So how about our CarIQ? Which one do you guys work with, and or you work with? It doesn't really matter. Somehow you're able to figure out get all the data regardless of which tracking system we use.
So yeah, thank you. That's a great question. So the telemat we call them telematic service providers. Samsara, Geotab. There's many. And it took the first few years of CarIQ's life were largely spent integrating to a variety of these, so that pretty much, regardless of who your provider is, we can use them. We just connect to your account. We have access at CarIQ to 40. Um, I will say, nowadays, uh, I think the issue of getting access to telematics data has been to a large degree solved. There's a number of aggregators out there, that will connect all these different ones, so you don't have to go connect to 40. You can connect to maybe one or two and get access to 40. And then the model is changing even further. Vehicle manufacturers, we call them OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, so like your Toyota and Ford and all of those guys. They're actually, if you have a modern vehicle, those ones that you mentioned, Samsara, Geotab, they give you a device that you plug into your, it's called an OBD2 port. It's a little port
Yeah.
under your steering wheel. But if you have a modern vehicle, you don't need a device. Most of the vehicle manufacturers, there's a little SIM card inside your vehicle that transmits your data to your vehicle manufacturer's cloud,
Mm-hmm.
whether you know it or not. And so the now it's you can go get that data directly for many models. Ford, for example, if you had a Ford F-150, I could access your Ford's vehicle data directly from Ford. And you wouldn't need to plug in any device or anything like that. Ford might charge you a monthly subscription like Samsara, but you wouldn't need a device anymore.
Wow. So those are Samsara type of vendors are looks like they're at jeopardy. But so that's really interesting. So how new the vehicle needs to be in order for us to look into like the OEM's data rather than
Like in the last 3, 4 years, those you'd be surprised. Like it all depends on the vehicle. And like if you're in, I know we're in the U.S. market, but in some markets like in Europe, that's already ubiquitous. Like almost the standard way to get access to data today in Europe would just go straight to sometimes the manufacturers still use third parties because they don't want to have to contract with little companies like CarIQ to give us access, but they make their data available through aggregators. And then you just pick your aggregator, and there's a number of them out there, and the pricing is even largely normalized. The U.S. is a little behind. It's not as not as advanced as Europe in that respect. But today, if you have a 3-4 year old vehicle, you can go get directly. If you told me your vehicle VIN, and it was a Ford vehicle, for example, I just could go to Ford with your permission and get access to that data. Um, but most vehicles today are still on one of the Samsaras or Geotab, but it's
Yeah.
changing.
Okay, got it. And then I also have a very dumb question. So I'm just curious as a nerd, nerd head. So how do you know whether I'm using this card for sushi or for fuel or
Ah,
for
hmm
a Coke at the Circle K? So,
yep.
mhm,
So where that comes in is through controls, and there's a lot of different ways you can set controls on a standard plastic card.
mhm,
The most traditional controls you can put in place are dollar limits on a transaction, what are called velocity limits. So how many times you can use them, so like you'd think and you'd be like, nobody needs to buy gas 5 times a day. That's just weird. So I'll restrict you to say you can use the card twice a day or 3 times a day, some number like that. So those are called velocity controls. And then the other category is merchant restrictions.
mhm.
So all the payment networks support limiting where a card can be used by either merchant category. So I can say broadly any what are called like automated fuel dispensers. Those are gas pumps, not inside the convenience store. So any of the gas pumps where you can just put a card in, you can restrict a card to say only work at automated fuel dispensers. And now, if you want broader use, you could say, okay, there's other categories. I want to be able to let my card work inside the convenience store. That's its own category. Or I want to use it for parking, or I want to use it for car wash, or I want to use it for. So generally, and that's what makes a fuel card a fuel card. Most of the normal cards um, may allow broad access and very few restrictions. So you might say, my business expense card, you could use it anywhere, but maybe not at a casino, a gambling casino like that. You might make a few restrictions. Gas cards are the opposite. You generally can't use them anywhere except a handful of places. And so fuel, parking tolls. So you can go down those categories and just decide what you want. If you want more restrictive, like I only want to use it at Shell,
Mhm.
that's where some of the specialty providers can come into play. Like a CarIQ can do finer restriction. That's hard to do on a just generic card. So some of us are like, we could use vehicle data. And, I know that you're not at a Shell because I know where your vehicle is. And I've mapped out the shells. So I can do things like use vehicle data to restrict you even further.
So basically, because you track vehicles' location, geolocations, so you can use geolocation data, GPS data to confine certain expenses and I guess stop the fraudulent. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah,
And we're using vehicle data like looking at the gas tank to, can make sure that whatever you buy goes into the vehicle. But then you can also use location, to do other things like you just said, either restrict where the card can be used, or we also look at the vehicle to make sure that the vehicle is at the gas station at the time the vehicle transacts. So yes, so that's where you can get sort of creative once you have access to the vehicle data. um, CarIQ and other companies start innovating on what can I do with that data to either, provide more interesting or, better controls, better reporting, a different experience, all of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, then I guess two questions. One is, do I have the right configure what expense categories I want, or it comes with a fixed set with a card? So if I want to add, for instance, convenience store expenses, I can use CarIQ. I have to use somebody else's cards. So that's one question. Another question is you're saying like a confinement restrictions. So for instance, if my drivers are using it, buying their Starbucks coffees, which I'm now allowed, do I get a real-time alert so I can stop them upfront? Or I like a month later, I was looking on my data that I realized, oh yeah, actually there's 3 Starbucks coffee on my cards. So what's that status?
Yeah, and so one, yes, controls are configurable. Where the devil comes is in the details a little bit. So, for example, um, so let's put Starbucks aside for a second. A more common for fleets is the convenience store. Like you go to a Circle K or even Shell. Most of these gas stations have a convenience store. And a lot of fleets will ask themselves a question: should I allow the driver to be able to go into the store? Because you can also pay for gas inside the store. And there's maybe other things inside the store you want like a quart of oil or, windshield. They need to buy a windshield wiper or something like, so you could ask the question, should I allow the driver to use the card inside the convenience store? But once we turn that on, it's very hard to control what they buy. So if they could use it
Yeah.
inside the store to buy a windshield wiper, chances are they can also use it inside the store to buy beer. And
You can load their a whole week of
yeah,
grocery.
yeah, okay. And so we could tell you after the fact sometimes what they bought. But it's the system. These are all just sort of how the system works. The system generally doesn't support what are called SKU level restrictions at the product level inside the store. The only thing you can buy generally at a gas pump is gas, sometimes a car wash. So you can't buy Coke or cigarettes at the gas pump. But once you open up the store, then it's hard to control what they do inside. And so in the Starbucks example, if you turned on Starbucks, it's easy to do, but it's hard to control what they can do inside. Once you give them access, they can go in and, so if there's something in there, like you want to allow them, an example might be like if you wanted to allow somebody to go into a grocery store and buy food, but not alcohol, like those kinds of restrictions on cards are hard to do.
I see. So it's better like be a little bit more strict. So if is there like a permission request? So for instance, like the drivers at the pump or at locations, they can't do it. There's but it's a legitimate expense, legitimate activities. Then your app or the owners will get a alert for
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. So you can set up, usually you can do this, get alerts for unusual activity, however that's defined. For a fleet manager, you probably don't want alerts on everything. Maybe you do, which is fine, but a lot of them don't. Like they're just like, I don't need to know every time one of my vehicles buys gas. Like that gets a little, and then you get into the mindset, you see the alerts and you stop looking at them because most of the time there's nothing to look at. So you might only want alerts when there's something you might consider suspicious. And a lot of times, like at CarIQ, when I showed you like what you bought at the amount of gas you bought and the amount of gas that went into the gas tank, when those things don't match, we do send an alert to a fleet manager and just say, heads up, we found a mismatch. And I'll emphasize again, not all mismatches are nefarious stuff. Like, right, so if somebody filled up a wood chipper or their chainsaws, whatever that they may be dragging around, that may be legit. And your business too, so like, oh yeah, Bob is he's out on the road doing like, so that's normal. But we can send alerts for like the identified potential sort of things that you want to know about.
Got it. Cool.
Yes.
Great.
So great. Quick question from me, maybe the last question from me. What size of fleet do you think it starts making sense to get into fuel cards? Like if it's me and Jing and we've got 2 vehicles, we're co-owners of the service. does it make will the discounts at the assuming neither of us are doing anything nefarious, are the discounts at the pump enough to justify a fuel card, or does it make sense to wait until we've got a couple other drivers or 10 other drivers? How do you think about that?
I would say, so I would say any fleet that is like 10 vehicles or more, almost by default, goes and gets a fleet card. Like it makes sense, and so when you start getting small, I will also say if your primary, if what you do with your vehicle is the primary expense, like think of a long haul trucker. Um, a lot of those are sole proprietors. Like that's a fleet of one owned by an individual. For them, 5 cents off a gallon of gas or something like that, all of that makes a difference, and they will go get fleet cards as well. So the question may be if you're sort of under 10, local fleet, driving around, maybe you're a family business and, I don't have any suspicions about my drivers. So there may be reasons why, and maybe you have, your favorite Amex card that you have for the business, and you want all your points on the Amex card because you get some loyalty there. So there could be good reasons why you shouldn't. If you're running a fleet, and I'll just put a number out there, in the 10 vehicle range, you should have a fleet card. And chances are, you have drivers that are, maybe cycling on and off, you have the turnover in there. You should be looking at your expense and managing it. Um, but if you're small and family business, whatever, local fleet, it's not the biggest deal. You love your Amex card, whatever. There may be reasons why, it makes sense that, okay, you don't really need one.
Yeah, I would say there's probably a number crunching, right? So if I can save 5 cents per gallon, I'll take a look of probably roughly how many gallons I use a month and
Yeah.
then do a calculation. It looks like the savings can offset the like $5 $5 per card. So
Exactly. So I like this. That's another good way to think about it. So if you are getting a discount at the pump, and depending on your usage, it may pay for itself, and then you'll get the additional benefits of some controls and reporting and analytics and stuff. So it probably makes sense.
do I get airline mileage out of using CarIQ or
No, and that's where and I don't think out of any gas card, but that's a reason why you might not like it for you guys. Like if it's Jing and James and small business, and yeah, again, you're using your favorite American Express card because you get great loyalty points on it, and you might not. I mean, maybe you don't care how many gallons of gas you actually expend. You just track. So there may be reasons, but no, most gas cards, the benefit is on savings on gas. That's almost exclusively how it works.
got it?
Great. All right. Well, this has been really educational, I think, for me and many other people. Um, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they've got more questions or are interested in CarIQ?
Yeah, totally. Would welcome anybody that has questions. I think we've provided contact. You can reach out to. Yes, you have my contact information, Jane, that you
Yeah,
will be sharing.
here.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I have both your phone number and then your sales folks' email address here. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, and if anybody wants to reach out to me directly, I'm sure you can get in touch with Duet, and they will pass you through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're also looking into integrating with CarIQ system, so Duet and CarIQ, so the data can flow seamlessly, uh, like from between the two platforms. So it's much easier for providers to manage their costs and service.
All
Okay.
right. Well, Khalid, thanks so much.
Pleasure. Well, thank you all so much. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks
Okay.
everyone. Have a good day.
Have a
Bye.
great
Thanks.
day.
Bye.